Welcome to the Broken to Build podcast, a refuge for authenticity. Each episode, you'll be reminded that our scars are the foundation of our strengths. You will feel seen, known, and loved as you find beauty in the brokenness while you build the extraordinary life you were created to live. Welcome back to the Broken to Build podcast. My name is Lauryn DeLoach. I am your host. This is Jilda Green. She is with me today. And today we're going to be talking about identity and what happens when your identity gets wrapped up in your job or your family, really anywhere that it's not supposed to be. And so Gilda has come. Her story is super interesting. She was on Wall Street, now a franchisee owner of several gyms, about to be third. You have two currently running, about to be a third. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you just tell everyone a little intro about yourself before we get into all the nitty gritty.
So I'm a Florida girl through and through. Even though I wasn't born here, I was born in Michigan. My family moved to Palm Beach Gardens, Florida when I was 5. And I'm the daughter of two immigrant parents that came here legally and really had an American dream. And that was to become physicians and build a life here. And they did that. And growing up as a kind of a firstborn of immigrants, you know, hard work, grit, perseverance was really part of my upbringing.
Yep.
And that's a good thing. But on the other hand, when it's not through the filter of God, I think that it can become part of who you are and your identity. Mm-hmm. And so that was really instilled in me at a very young age. Performance, grit, type A, the whole thing. And I really, my identity was really wrapped up in that for most of my young adult life, for sure. Yeah.
So how did you end up, from your Florida girl, how did you end up here on Wall Street?
So education was always really important to my parents. Yeah. And I was a really good student. Had the opportunity to go and study at Georgetown University in DC. And that's really a school where, there's 4 tracks, medicine, foreign service, Wall Street, finance, or law. And so finance seemed the most interesting to me, even though it really wasn't where my passion was.
Yeah.
Again, you got to think about the performance mentality.
Right.
And my parents always instilled such a drive in me to always not just provide, but to afford my future family an even better opportunity than I was given.
Yeah.
And so Wall Street is a place where you can make lots of money.
Yes.
And so I really chose it for that. I mean, I'm a little, not ashamed to say that now, but I just didn't have the foundation to really evaluate my life and choose it not just because of what it could give me back,
right,
but because it was the Lord's plan for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is so common. I mean, if you don't have the Lord and you're not seeking his will and God, what do you want me to do? Like, why would you not go after wealth? Why would you not go after having it better than my parents had it?
Absolutely.
Like that makes total sense. So when you got there, I know that's where you met your husband, Chris. Was that immediate? How, like, where is that?
No, so I spent 4 years in DC studying at Georgetown, and then right out of my, as I graduated, went right to Wall Street, moved to New York City in 2001, and worked in finance for 18 years. I met Chris, maybe I was 27, so 5 years after moving or 6 years after moving.
You were there 18 years. I don't think I realized.
I was
how
there
long.
15 years.
15.
In the last 3 years, I worked remotely from Palm Beach Gardens.
Okay.
Yeah. When we made the move down here. So, but yes, I worked, in finance on Wall Street for 18 years.
Okay.
So, I met my husband maybe 7 years in, to being on Wall Street.
Which I love that. And we talk about this a lot on the podcast, how the Lord, there's some times where it's not a decision that you necessarily prayed about, but he still worked it out in your journey. And that's where you met your husband.
Yes.
And I love that it doesn't always depend on us. It's not like, oh, I was seeking and this happened. It's like he uses all things for our good.
Absolutely.
And so,
and I think he allowed me to walk through that.
Yeah.
All the things I walked through, just being in I was of the world. I really was. I grew up culturally Catholic.
Okay.
And I mean, I could be speaking to a lot of you out there. Maybe you have Latin background or any other background. Very culturally Catholic, but didn't have any sort of grid for who God really was.
Yeah.
And definitely didn't have a grid for who Jesus was and who Jesus wanted to be in my life.
Yep.
And so it took me kind of getting to the end of myself through, a health crisis, really feeling a lack of purpose in what I was doing, for Jesus to get a hold of me.
Yeah.
And that was around when I was 32 years old and still living in New York City.
So what was that experience? Like where did he capture your heart where you're like, this is real. This is what my life is about now. Like what was it?
So I think I had a taste of Jesus when I was in high school. So I went to Young Life, an amazing organization, and was really active here in this area. And that's where I really got my first exposure to who Jesus was and that he wanted to have a relationship with me. But as I described before, type A performance, what do I need to do? I was a really great rule follower.
Yeah.
And it really became just about following the rules and doctrine and not a relationship. And so when I went off to college with that in mind.
Yeah, which is what, I mean, that's religion. That's religion.
It's religion.
You follow the rules
spirit,
and
for sure.
Yeah.
And that's not a foundation. So it didn't take very long until I started to kind of slip into secularism.
Yeah.
I mean, and what, just living
what
a
the world
life.
had to offer.
And so that just kept going.
Yeah.
And, by the time I was 32 and I got to my aha moment with God, really where I really surrendered, I didn't really think twice about it. It was really weird how it's such a slippery slope. But not having that strong foundation in faith as a child, that's why it's so important if you're parenting kids.
Yeah.
Jesus is the most important thing, that you raise your kids, knowing the word and understanding the word and understanding that there's a God that loves them and that wants to be in every detail of their life.
Yeah. Because we're not always with them.
No, we aren't.
And they need to know that there is someone that's always with them.
Yeah.
And in fact, my oldest just got his license like a month ago. And Kingston. He is so cute. But I got him a little mini Jesus.
Just a little Jesus.
A little Jesus. That he could keep in his car, that it was like it's funny, but also a physical representation of
absolutely.
I'm your mom and I love you, but I'm not always with you, and Jesus is with you. And so whether you need him for the protection, the safety, the wisdom, the love, the peace, whatever you need, and it sits on his dashboard and is always reminding him of
There's
that.
Actually, there was a man in my church, he's since passed. But he used to keep he used to order them by the thousands.
Oh, really?
And he'd go up to people at the grocery store, wherever he went,
cool.
and you look like you need a little Jesus.
You need a little Jesus.
And he'd pray for them, which I thought was so amazing.
Awesome.
But yeah, so not having the foundation, I think God really used my story.
Yeah.
And to bring me back to him.
Yeah.
I mean, I always knew he was real. I just didn't understand this concept of a relationship. And if you're struggling with that, I get it. I still kind of struggle with that.
Yeah.
Even though I walk with the Lord, and I very much, when I made the decision to give my life to him, I was really serious. And that meant a change of career. That meant, it was literally a complete detour of where my life was going.
So when you gave your life to him and then you were like, okay, I'm going to get a new career, you felt like that's where the Lord was leading you out of finance, out of Wall Street, out of those
things?
Not
in that moment. I'll be honest, how I came back to the Lord, I had my first son when I was 32.
Okay.
And being on Wall Street, you don't get much maternity leave.
Yeah.
And, you're expected to work 60 plus hours a week, sometimes 100.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So I remember, I think I had a 6-week maternity leave. And I was not ready to go back. And I had a really traumatic emergency C-section.
Okay.
And I was definitely in the throes of postpartum depression.
Yeah.
And so I was really in a really dark place.
Yeah.
And having to go back to work. And, for all of those that have worked on Wall Street, they know it is a dog-eat-dog world. and came back to work, and someone was sitting at my desk, and I was like, they gave me a different sort of job on the trading floor.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what am I doing? I want to be home with my son.
Yeah.
And so that was happening. I was in the throes of postpartum depression. I had definitely a form of fibromyalgia. Like my body was breaking down. It was just not good.
Yeah.
And
so
that scenario is where I surrendered to Lord.
Okay. So to bring it back a little bit, because your identity, you were succeeding, you were thriving. How did that feel like? But there was a cost to that.
Oh, there was such a cost to that.
How did it feel emotionally? Did you feel like I am killing it, I'm on the top of my game? Or did you feel like there's something missing?
Oh, definitely that there's something missing. I mean, the bank account would have said, okay, you're succeeding, you're at the top of your game. But I was like really empty inside.
Okay.
I knew that I was missing something. And I think when you go through depression or, in my case, postpartum depression.
I went through it with all three of my kids. So
and it's awful, right? It's awful. And you're looking for something to hold on to. But I think the Lord used that really to really highlight in my life my need for him. Yeah. And when Toffer started growing up, I was like, I just brought me back to my childhood. And I had a good childhood. My parents are amazing people.
Yep.
They gave me me and my sister, everything they could. And lots of love in our home. It was a fun home. Yeah. So always dance parties and great food.
Yeah.
And really, they didn't give me faith because they had such a horrible experience in the church. And
join the club.
Yes, most of us. It's made up of people.
It is, and it's not every experience. I have had some of my most wonderful experiences in the church, and some of the hardest. So it's you get it all because you get people.
You get people. Yeah, and people are broken and imperfect.
Yep,
but God's not.
Right.
And so, going back to that moment of just being in full surrender, Lord, I can't do this anymore. Like I knew he was real. I cried out to him. I remember exactly. I was crossing the West Side Highway, going to my apartment in North Battery Park, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I need you. Like I know you're real. I need you to come into my life, and I need you to help me with this. I need you to heal me. Yeah. And I had a miracle happen right then and there, crossing the street. Wow. I mean, I literally felt the depression lift. And so God showed up in such a miraculous way for me. Yeah. It was like, okay, this is, he means business. Yep. And so, I mean, it didn't happen all at once. It didn't happen, in a moment. Right. It took a while. He gave me a real hunger and thirst for his word. I started reading the Bible. We started looking for churches. Of course, all I really knew was Catholic church. Right. So I would go to all these Catholic churches, and I'm like, nope, this is not it. This is not it. Yeah. And he led us to a church that actually met in our building in Manhattan at the school that was below our building. Oh, okay. And the first month, I just cried from the beginning of the service to the end of the service. Yeah. People probably thought I was crazy. Yeah. But God was working things out in me. Yeah. And by the end of the first month, I was like, this is it. Like our life radically changed. Yeah. And when you surrender like that, and there was layers of surrender, right? There's levels of surrender.
We're all in process.
Absolutely.
I'm still surrendering. Process, right? I'm still.
So, yes. And we will be till the day we die. Right. But I think that he's so kind and gentle, how the Lord, when you really seek him, when you really are a person that's after his heart, how just gentle he is with you. Yes. And how he waits on us. Yes. Right? To be ready. And sometimes we go around the mountain a million times, and he's patient with us. Yeah. And he was very patient with me. And so, that meant, my friend groups changed naturally. It wasn't like I still love every single person that was in my life back then. Yeah. It's just my interests changed. He started to change my heart. And I think that was such a stark difference in that religious kind of attitude I had towards things. That rule, follow, everything. He was changing my heart. It wasn't about me striving to be different. He was changing me from the inside out.
Right. So as your heart changes, your actions change, your circle changes, it's not you fake it till you make
Yes.
it. It's not you change it from the
Exactly.
outside and then eventually.
It changes you from the
Yeah.
inside out. And so again, it's levels, it's phases of it. And
Yeah.
you take one step forward, a half step back, 2 steps forward.
Yes.
And it's this process that he takes you through. But as I started to study his word and really learn about him and his character and just the miraculous God he is, I started to believe for miracles for myself and my family.
Yeah.
And I started praying really bold prayers. And those prayers, I mean, he was answering them in a mighty way.
What was the boldest prayer that you remember?
So
praying?
there's so many, but
Yeah.
I think the first one that really confirmed to me that I was literally co-laboring and walking with the Lord is maybe 2011. Yeah, 2012. I just felt the Lord saying that my time in New York City was done.
Okay.
And he was closing that chapter. And I'm a Florida girl. I wanted to go back home.
Yeah.
My family's here. I wanted to be back in Palm Beach Gardens. But Wall Street jobs don't really, or back then they didn't really exist in Palm Beach Gardens.
Yeah,
Now there's a lot more finance down here. But, that seemed impossible if I was going to keep my career.
Yep.
And not that I wanted to, but I needed a way to earn money too.
Yeah.
So I started to pray and I was like, Lord, I know that you're calling me out of here, but you have to make the way for that to happen.
Yep.
And so the first really big miracle was that the firm I worked for had a satellite office here in Palm Beach Gardens, and only the partners, the owners of the firm, were allowed to work there. They all had houses down here, and they would spend half the year down here. And I was at the water cooler one day, and I literally been praying that morning, Lord, I need a miracle. And one of the partners of the firm happened to be there, and he's like, hey, Gilda, aren't you from Palm Beach? And I said, yeah, I am. He said, we have an office there. And I said, oh, I know. And he goes, well, have you ever thought about like moving back down there? And I was like,
wow.
what? I mean, this was like the most coveted, only partners worked there.
Yeah.
Like the favor God showed me through him, like why this man even said this.
And you didn't even have to bring it up. He brought it up.
He brought it up. And I said, immediately, I was like, this is my chance. I was like, well, I have a son and he's going to need to go to school soon. So could I move there full time?
Yeah.
If my clients are okay with it.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't see a reason why. And I mean, when I tell you so many people had tried to make that move, and it was like, absolutely not. That was reserved for the partners only.
Yep.
And I mean, literally God made it happen in 3 months. I think that was in 2000. I think I'd said 2012. It was 2013, the spring of 2013. And we were moved down here by July of 2013.
That's amazing.
My husband, I literally called my husband. I was like, just quit your job. We're going.
Yeah. Don't give them a chance to change their mind. We're doing this now.
He was the CMO of a pretty large marketing corporation.
Okay.
And
was he excited about that? Did he want to come back?
Yes, he did. He did.
Not come back because he's not from here.
No, he's not from here. He's from the Northeast, but he did want to make the move.
Okay.
So he literally called his boss to resign, and they were like, "No, we can't lose you. You can work remotely." So God kept both our jobs intact, and moved us down to Florida.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. It was a miracle.
Yeah.
It was literally a miracle. People were very upset in my firm that I was
like, what can I say?
That.
I'm blessed and highly favored.
I'm blessed and highly favored. And so that was the first one.
Okay.
And the second one I'll tell you about, and again, this is part of the growth process.
Yeah.
And like, I wasn't mature. I'm still not mature. I'm maturing every day in my faith and with the Lord. But the second one, when I moved down here, I still had a lot of things the Lord had to work out with me. Yeah. And my identity was still very much in what I did. Mm-hmm. And so part of that was living that part out, right? Yeah. Which of the, status.
Palm Beach lifestyle.
Materialism. Yeah. And so what's the first thing I did? Even though my husband was like, let's just buy a small house by your parents. And I was like, no way.
Absolutely not.
So we bought the dream house, had the dream cars, the dream private education, the whole thing. And looking back, I see how, even though I was seeking the Lord and running after him and reading his word, there were still so many things he wanted to work out of me.
Yeah.
Because one of my idols was money and God.
Yeah.
Money and materialism.
Yeah.
And
we could do a whole segment on mammon and the spirit behind that.
And
like,
that was, and that's the Wall Street culture. I mean, that's just part of the culture, and I've been in the culture for so long.
Yeah.
And, you know, even that performance mentality that I had, that type A, it really lends itself to that as well.
Absolutely.
So I moved down here. I did all the things I probably shouldn't have done. But again, God is so gracious.
Yeah.
And I think that even moving down here, having achieved that, to be able to come down here, that the Lord blessed me with that, I thought that I would be happier in what I was doing. But I started to get more and more just discouraged and feeling purposeless in my career. I mean, when you think about, you spend your career, most of your time working for most Americans, most people in the world. And if it's not purposeful and it's not something you love, then you're going to be a pretty miserable person.
Yeah. And from the outside, you have everything.
Yeah.
You're still working on Wall Street. You've got the house, the cars, the kids in private
nanny,
school.
the this, the that.
Like,
and
you have no reason in the world's eyes to be
But I wasn't with my kids.
Right.
I didn't get to see my kids grow up. I'd hand them to a nanny and go off to work.
Yeah.
And so the Lord really started to deal with me on that. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, this job is not for me. I've stayed 18 years too long.
Yeah.
And so I really started to seek him about where he wanted me to pour my effort in and what kind of career he wanted me to have.
Yeah.
And I had all these ideas, but I remember one day in prayer, the Lord spoke to me and he was like, you want me to give you this, but are you willing to give up, right? What put you there?
Yeah. So good.
The big house, the cars, the this, the that. And God is a God of abundance. I don't think there's anything wrong with riches or having more than enough.
It was your heart.
It's my heart. It was my heart.
That stuff had you.
Yeah. That stuff had me.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he wanted that place in my life. And so when I really came to have the revelation around this, I was like, I prayed this prayer. I said, Lord, if this is not what you want for me, then take it all away. And that is that's a scary
prayer
and scary.
I don't know if I pray those prayers
to pray. But I did it, and I didn't really think about it because I honestly I want the one desire in my heart is to chase him and to be that I be in alignment with what he created me to do and to be. And so I prayed that prayer, and within 2 weeks, my husband lost his job. My commissions were cut probably by 50 to 75%.
Wow.
And so imagine we went from living on, let's say, 100 to 25, right?
Wow.
So it was really drastic.
Yep.
And I knew it was the Lord. I knew it was the Lord. And I remember, one night we were going to bed, my husband and I was like, listen, I think we have to sell everything. And he's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
He's like, I think we have to sell the house. He's like, I'll get another job. Big deal. We have to sell the house. I was like, no, this is the Lord. And I shared with him that I prayed that prayer. And he was like, were you going to tell me
do that?
That you were going to pray that prayer?
Yeah.
But he was in agreement. And in an effort to preserve what we worked so hard to save.
Yeah.
And not live outside our means, given the current situation.
Yep.
We literally sold everything. We sold that dream house. We got, less expensive cars.
Yeah.
We did all the things. And we really were like, okay, Lord, we're going to trust you. And it's through that he brought this idea of owning Burn Bootcamps to us. And so what the Lord spoke to my heart about Burn Bootcamp was, I want you to create the community that most people don't have. I want you to create a space for the family to come. And it starts with the woman. It starts with the mom.
Yeah.
Where she's going to feel safe and empowered and inspired. And life is spoken to her, over her all the time.
Yeah.
And in exchange, she's doing that for others.
Yeah.
And he really gave me a vision for these gyms. And I mean, I have no fitness. I mean, I was an athlete in high school.
Right.
But I really don't
discus, right?
I did throw the discus, but I was a speed skater and a figure skater.
Okay.
So I went, all the way to nationals, and I hung up my skates at 15 because I wanted to go to college, because at that point I had to kind of make a choice whether I wanted to go pro or go to college.
Yep.
And I was burned out.
Yeah.
So I didn't really have a background in fitness. I mean, I liked fitness,
Right,
but I didn't have a background in fitness. And I was like, okay, Lord, I guess we're doing this. And right around the time he gave me that word, I was at a prayer meeting actually in Boston, and just randomly with a friend.
Okay.
And this woman crossed the room and gave me a prophetic word that was pretty unbelievable. And so what she said to me was like, I know you don't know me, but I see for you, your ministry is in the marketplace. I see you having many, many businesses, and that your faith will be infectious like a virus. It's interesting she used that word.
Wow.
And that the culture I create would bring many, many to come back to him and to Christ. And she sees me march. She said, I see you marching into heaven with an army of people behind you.
Oh, wow.
And so I
Did you
really
cry?
took
I would have
that
cried.
to heart. Yes, I did cry.
Yeah.
But I didn't even have a grid for it, because at that point I didn't have any businesses other than my career on Wall Street,
right,
in a multi-level marketing business that I kind of did on the side.
Yeah.
Because I love the products.
Yeah.
So I was like, multiple businesses. Well, how is this even going to happen?
Yeah.
He had already kind of been speaking to me about Burn Bootcamp. So I just really leaned in, and I was like, okay, Lord, let's do this. And we bought our first franchise in 2016.
Okay.
It was really hard to find real estate. It was really hard. I mean, it was an uphill battle. It was not an easy, the actually starting this business and getting it off the ground was not easy.
Yeah.
But I knew it was the Lord, and that's what drove me. So when we finally opened in November of 2017, about a month before, and this is the second miracle, when the Lord puts something on your heart and he calls you to do something, he will always make a way for you to do it.
Yes.
Because in November of 2016, it was actually October, so right before the opening, we were supposed to open mid-November. I was like, Lord, I cannot continue. I was still working on Wall Street. I had not retired yet.
Okay.
I cannot continue to work this job and open this first gym.
Yeah.
And we'd used a lot of the money we'd saved to invest in this franchise and doing the build out and everything like that. And so I prayed that, and I said, I'm hoping you're going to make a way to provide for us while we get this business off the ground.
Yeah.
And he set up a situation. I mean, I just can't even explain how this happened, but it did. About a week later, I got a phone call from a very big client of the firm who said, I want to tell you something, and I'm not in agreement with it, and I want to warn you before it happens. And I said, okay. And he said, your firm is trying to hire somebody to take your position and to take me away, to take my business away from you.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm doing that, but I want you to know who you work for. And so I took that to prayer.
Yeah.
And what I did was I flew up to New York like a couple of days later and met with the partners of the firm.
Yeah.
And just, let them know that I was privy to what was happening.
Yeah.
And that I didn't want to fight.
So you're trying to snake my job away from me.
I didn't want to
See
fight.
you guys.
Yeah, exactly. But I just asked him, I said, listen, I am happy to hand you the book of clients, but you do need to compensate me for the time I'm going to be looking for a job or looking for something else to do. And so I asked boldly for 2 years, plus, commissions and benefits.
Okay.
And they kind of scoffed at me. They kind of laughed at me.
Yeah.
But I said, think about it.
Yeah.
What you're doing is wrong. And I'm just asking to be treated fairly.
Yeah.
So I flew back to Palm Beach, and about 2 weeks later, they had me come back up to New York, and they made good on the deal.
Wow.
And so the Lord provided. The Lord provided 2 years plus benefits.
Yeah.
And so he freed me up to really, be rid of the stress and the anxiety of like, okay, we're jumping into this new business where, new businesses could take years to be profitable.
Yeah. And to run after, he freed you up to run after
without
what he called you to do.
Burden and worry of like, okay, how are we gonna maintain or even have a lifestyle
Yes.
without, having an income coming in.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times it's just about asking boldly and having the faith to ask.
Yep.
That the Lord does provide when he gives you an idea, when he calls you to something.
Yes.
If we step out in obedience, he will provide for that. So that was a big miracle.
Yeah.
And, again, it wasn't easy. Like, this was a whole new business for me. I never had a brick and mortar business.
Yeah.
Dealing with people every day, managing people, hiring, all those things. But he trained me. He really did. I'm not going to lie. I did go back to the performance driven, and I'm going to do it myself and trying to control it.
Well, especially at a gym.
Yeah.
It's so easy to slip into that performance mentality.
And just running the business.
Yeah.
And 6 months into it, I had run myself like into a place that I didn't want to be. I was so burned out.
Yeah.
And I was like, Lord, why did you do this to me? Like, why did you call me to this?
Yeah.
And he was very clear. He's like, you're trying to do it by yourself. And so, again, another layer of leveling up and intimacy with him and surrendering. I was like, I can't, you've got to take over.
Yeah.
And that led to, I mean, honestly, the success that we have in our franchises is all because of him.
Yeah. And was that letting go? Yeah.
Letting go. Putting hiring to him.
Yeah.
Putting, when it's time for people to go to him.
Yeah.
When, the culture, praying people in, the right people in, the right community in.
Yeah.
All of it. It's him. It's absolutely 1,000% him. And even down to the properties we've gotten.
Yeah.
It's been him. It's been him. I mean, our second location is inside a church. There used to be a church. They since they bought a property and built a new sanctuary.
Yeah.
But my second gym, Burn Bootcamp Jupiter, the workout room facility is inside the old sanctuary.
Wow.
So it's just so cool what he's done.
Yeah.
And what, I mean, never in my wildest dreams would I have thought of it.
Yeah.
But he gives me a vision for it. And I just, okay, Lord, now provide. Like, let's walk it out together.
Yeah.
And he does it every single time.
Love that. And you're about to open your third location. And then, so I want to come back to the prophecy that you received, because now you've got 3 gym locations. You've also got a finance business as well on the side.
On the side. Yes.
And then is there anything else on top of those things? I mean, you have your network marketing business. I still have my network
marketing business.
Yeah.
Which is, basically a residual.
Yeah.
So that prophecy is happening. I know there's so much more.
Yeah.
I know we're just scratching the surface.
Yep.
I mean, I really believe the Lord is calling his children to great things.
Yeah.
And to do great things, you need great wealth.
Yeah.
To be able to make the impact on ministries that I want to make, I'm going to need great wealth.
Yeah.
To make, to have the influence I think he calls us all to have. We have to live lives that are attractive to other people. Mm-hmm. The thing is not to be married to that.
Right. To come back to that.
To hold it loosely.
Yes.
And that he
this
gives,
is yours.
he takes away.
It's a resource.
And it's God's.
Yeah. And it's a resource, and God, do what you want with it.
Yes.
And sometimes there will be abundance, and sometimes we'll be in a season where there's not, but the Lord uses it all. And if our heart is not attached to it.
Exactly.
That's what he wants.
Yeah.
And so he wants vessels that he can flow whatever the resource is through.
And I think your flesh, you're constantly ebbing and flowing back a little bit, what your flesh desires and calls you to do. Yeah. But it's always an opportunity to go deeper with him. Yeah. And be in more intimacy with him.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. It's been a journey, but I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, I live a life of purpose. Yep. I live a life that it's joyful, it's amazing. Not that it's perfect. We all have problems. Yeah. But I feel fulfilled. Yeah. I feel fulfilled, and I feel like I'm in lockstep with him. And that's a really good place to be. Yeah. A very different place than when I was on Wall Street. Yeah. And living really for myself. Yeah. Or for this ambition of, having more. Yeah. That my identity was defined in my success. Yeah. and defining what I did and not who I was to him or who I am to him.
So the podcast is called Broken to Build. And we have lots of different guests on with lots of different broken pieces. And all of our brokenness looks different because we're all different people. So some might struggle with addiction. Some, it might be depression, anxiety. We've had just different guests on, and we'll continue to have different guests on to showcase those different broken pieces. Yours, from what I'm hearing you say throughout our time together, is being raised with a spirit of religion. Yeah. And in that, you missed out a lot on the relationship with Christ. And then your identity being in what you did and what you had. Mm-hmm. And I think that will resonate with a lot of people because especially, we live in Palm Beach. So it's very common here. But I think at times we can all get wrapped up in what we do or what we have. Mm-hmm. So how would you encourage people that are struggling with those two broken pieces, the religion and the identity pieces?
So my advice and encouragement to you would just surrender to the Lord. I mean, he wants what's best for you. He has a plan for your life. He had that plan before he even put you in your mother's womb. And that plan is still there for you. And it really is as simple as surrendering. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not an easy ride. Like you're learning, you're growing. Yeah. But he's with you and he's faithful. The Lord is faithful. So jump. Yeah. Take the leap of faith. Yeah. Don't stay one moment longer than you already have living a life that is not fulfilling, because the way he designed us to be and to live and to move in this world is fulfilled and making an impact for him. Yeah. And so no matter where you are, you don't have to be like on Wall Street or anything like that, but no matter where you are, if you're single mom, a stay-at-home mom, a person that's dealing with abuse, a person that's dealing with addiction, there's more for you. There's more for you. And he wants to bring you out of that into a life of purpose and joy and abundance. He is a God of abundance, and he never runs out. Yeah. He never runs out. Yeah. So good. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. If people want to find out more information about you or Burn or the finance piece, is there a website, like social media handle, anything like that you want to leave us with? Yeah, I'm not great on social media. You are not. You are not. She does repost things that people post, though. I'm great person to person. You've got that going for you. So at Gilda Green on Instagram. Okay. Burn Bootcamp Jupiter, at Burn Bootcamp Stewart, and at Burn Bootcamp North Palm Beach on Instagram. And my website is www.jildacgreen. Awesome. So you can find me there. Cool. And you can always DM me if you have any questions. Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you guys so much for joining us at Broken to Build, and stay tuned for the next episode.